Oh, pay off my house. I like that one. Property. Any kind of property you would like? Any kind of property? You can put that on there if you want. Some people like mountain houses, some people like beach houses. A chocolate fountain. Let's just be honest, what's really important here? I'll give that one a check. Ooh, a trip. Are you a surfer? Do you like the ocean? Because that is a big ocean spot. Undecided, mountain, beach. Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we'll start at 2:05. We're gonna give people another minute. A trip, yes. To whoever wrote this, do you surf? Because that is a huge surfing destination. They've got giant waves there, like put you in the hospital kind of waves. Yep. You can also draw on the whiteboard if you'd like to draw the thing that you want. You can do that as well. Yeah, not the hand. Whoever's got the hand on the left side there, it's the pencil. Go over one, it's the pencil. With the pencil, you can draw. And you can choose your color over there. There's lots of cool colors. You don't surf. I want to watch the waves from the beach chair. Got it, Erin. And I think whoever's doing this drawing might have been in a different training I did. So nice. Dig in the drawing. Nice. Yeah, the whiteboard's fun. If you don't use it in your class, I do love the whiteboard only because students can talk and be anonymous. And if a student writes something you don't like, then you can just delete it. Pay off my house. Yep, flowers. Feel free to draw on the whiteboard. I'm digging this drawing right here. Yep. I actually had a student as a joke. It was the last day of class and he was being silly. We got on the whiteboard and he put Eric is my favorite student, Instructor Boyer. Everybody started laughing because everybody knew who it was. And but the whiteboard can be just a fun place for people to connect. You got some real drawers in this class. All right, well, let's go ahead and start. It's 2:05. So I'm glad you guys are having fun with the whiteboard here. If you need to finish your Batman drawing, go ahead really quick and then I'm going to change the screen here in a second. Yeah, this is fun. It just is a fun way to connect with students. I really like it. And then you can use the little hand over here to point at extra guac on Breedable. So yeah, I like the whiteboard a lot. So I am going to go ahead and share my file. I hate to get rid of all this beautiful artwork, but it must happen. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and begin. We are missing people, but that's okay. Life gets busy. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. I love this picture, returning to normal. I love that, is that even a thing anymore? So returning to a state of normal. And there is a state of normal out there. It just needs to be redefined. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So who am I? It's just important to tell you who I am really quick, just so you know who you're learning from. But I'm the Human Services Technology Program Director. Human Services Technology is teaching students about counseling, about how to be case managers, how to work in social services. So my license is actually as a marriage and family therapist. I'm licensed with the state, currently inactive, so I can work with students without worrying about my license. So I have a license in marriage and family therapy, so I can supervise people. I used to work with juvenile justice. If you don't know what juvenile justice is, there is a system of incarceration for 12 to 18-year-olds. And I used to be the family therapist supervisor for Central Florida when I lived in Florida. So I used to supervise others on how to be counselors. And I worked with the population of juvenile justice and their families. And then I've been in education for about 15 years. And then I came to this role in January. And I love it because it combines the two things I love, which is education and learning and my passion for counseling and helping others. So that's my background. And if you have any students who sound like that's what they'd like to do, my shameless plug is send them my way because we're pretty much a virtual program. And we do have some non-traditional meets, but there are some great things. We're zero cost. So if you have a student you think might fit with us, shameless plug, send them my way. So let's just start jumping into it. And I want you to type in the chat box, what does normal mean to you? If you had to come right now to a definition, what would normal mean? So take a second to put that in the box. Okay, the thing that is expected, person status quo, expect the unexpected. Good, Amy. What else would normal mean if somebody said, what's normal? Anybody else? No major surprises or changes. Routine, good. Okay, consistency, the standard thing. Okay, good. Well, let me give you the definition that comes from the dictionary. And it's an adjective conforming to a standard, usual, typical, or expected, which some of you guys said. It's also a noun. It means the usual, average, or typical state or condition. So you see the word in there twice, and I'll go ahead and circle it for you. Let me choose red because I think red is greater. It's a better color for this. And you see that word, we can see it kind of set there. It's kind of typical. When you got an elevator, you know to face a certain way. When you come to class, you know to face the board. There's a certain sense of normal. When you walk down a hallway, you don't walk like a monkey, you walk on 2 feet, and that's because of a quote unquote, there's like a typical, there's a standard, there is something expected. So with that, before we start talking about what the new norm is, I tend to draw this a lot. So we have to know what abnormal is. And so we're not talking, I want to just be clear about what we're talking about. We're talking about what is the new norm. But with that, we have to talk about, we're talking about this. So if this was my spectrum here, and this was kind of the abnormal on these two ends of the spectrum out here, we are not talking about that. We are talking about kind of this sense of norm for a student, for kind of like a student that we would see on campus. It's like a sense of norm. They understand the typical, they understand what's expected. And so for the sake of our conversation here, we are only talking about this in the center of it. We're talking about just what's the normal, okay? We're not talking about the abnormal. And what that means is, I'll just give you a definition here really quick because I want to make sure we're defining normal in our conversation, and we're not talking about the abnormal in this conversation. So I just want to define, it's more of the outside of that right there. So the normal would be, I have anxiety, I struggle with anxiety, I take my medication, or I don't take my medication, but I find a way to self-medicate, but I go to class, I try to do what I need to do, and there's a sense of anxiety, but there's an ability to function. And then we have the abnormal, which is kind of on the outsides of this, which I showed you here. And I'll use the little pointer finger, but out here on the abnormal, you're going to have more of a sense of, I have fear. It keeps me from leaving the house ever. I can't get out of bed. I just can't move. They're not able to keep functioning. So what we're talking about here is a sense of normal, like what we can expect moving forward in like the bulk of our students. And so there is an abnormal out here where you'll have a student, I give this example many times, is I had a student, I told her to have a great day, and she got extremely mad at me. She went all the way up to the dean and complained that I was rude and sarcastic. And the reasoning was she felt like I should understand her life, to understand that she was struggling so much in her life. So I would only tell her to have a great day if I was trying to be sarcastic. So from then on, I chose to deal with her very differently because I understood that she was dealing with some different mental health issues. And so what you might be able to say to a student like, have a great day, became something I couldn't say to this student because she was dealing with a mental illness and felt like I was attacking her because I knew her personal life, which I did not. So when this conversation we're talking about today, we're just talking about the normal. So when we talk about what it's going to be, it's going to sound kind of funny, but we're talking about the normal of what is the normal in probably the normal of our students, as in the students who are experiencing a sense of normal. So let's just jump off of that. I just wanted to be clear about what we're talking about. We're not going to go out to the outsides of normal, and that'll make sense probably more near the end. So what is abnormal? What is normal? It's both a subjective term and an objective term. If you're not sure what this is and you have never heard of them, we're going to talk about it quick, and that's because both are important. So what does normal mean? Well, it's an objective term, which means it has facts, observations, and measurements, but normal is also a very subjective term. So let's just cover the objective here really quick so we can kind of get that out of the way. We do understand there is a normal going into fall. We do have facts. We also know what to be true because we look out at our students and we can see that they're struggling. We can see they took the bus. We can see certain facts about our students because we experience here, okay? If I came to you and said, you know, students write great emails. I mean, the emails are just phenomenal. Don't you just, they write so eloquently? And you would say, That's not my experience. My experience is that students struggle writing emails. My experience is students need help writing emails. They're not being taught that. So we have facts, and we also have what we know to be true, which would also be some also facts. But if you've never seen this book right here, it's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Disorders, which we use in my program. But this is the objective. So going back to our, like if you have a sense of fear that keeps you from getting out of bed, this book is our objective for what's normal. If you're not able to get out of bed, that could be a normal behavior, but it could be an abnormal behavior where you need intervention. So we do have an objective meaning of the word normal, and that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Disorders, 5th version, which is a mouthful to say, but these are our facts. These say this is what's normal going into the future. So there is a fear that is a fear that we all have, but we can function in society. And then there's another fear that keeps us from getting out of bed. And that would probably be in the Diagnostic Manual of Disorders. And that is basically something that's not normal. Okay. So that's our norm. We also have some other facts that we know going into the future. And if you're doing something else, I would stare at the screen for just a second to grab some of these facts because I'll go through them pretty quick. So these are our facts. This is something we know to be true. This is objective. Going into the future, this is a normal. This is something that we can expect. This is a typical of what we can expect. So this hasn't changed or varied too much. These facts are, you know, there's some wiggle room in there, but this is going to be the bulk of your, this is going to be factual. And this is a lot of the students that we have are going to probably range more in these 3 categories right here, which I don't have the pointer finger on, these 3 categories right here. If you could, if you feel up to it, check mark the people that you have in your class right now. So do you have any of these students in your class right now? It looks like a pencil up there, but you can check mark who is in your classes right now. And you can say, I have lots of these students, but who would you say is going to be the bulk of the students in your class? Right, and I see a lot of Gen Z and a lot of Generation Y, good. So Gen Zers are our tech savvy students. Gen Y is gonna be tech savvy, but not quite as much, but we have a generation out there that has grown up with a phone in their hand since birth. And they are in our classes. So there is a norm, again, that's the objective that we can define. So here are the facts. I'm gonna run them through really fast. You'll have to pay attention real quick just to grab the facts if you want them. But here we go. This is the norm, this is the objective, this is what we can expect in the fall, okay? Now, if you can tell the statistics right here, they kind of drop off around 2015, which was the last time this, anyway, she wrote a book called iGen. So in her book, these are her last facts that she gave. With COVID, it has actually gotten worse, as we know that addiction, mental health has all greatly increased in this amount of time. So this is not even like COVID. And these are facts for what normal is. And so we also have a less dating fact there. As you can see, that's really gone down. And less sex. Students just aren't engaging in sexual intercourse anymore. Not as much, not hang out with friends. This one tends to be an eye-opener for me because we really think our students are hanging out with friends. They're doing a lot of stuff. But if you really look at the statistics, after the iPhone was released, after like the internet really boomed, students started staying home. So imagine how low this would be when you include COVID. Okay, let's go to another one. They're not getting enough sleep. This is getting together with friends informally. Look how low that is. And again, this is a fact. This is something we know. This is the objective that we do know about normal. And imagine how low it would be, if that is even possible. It is even lower now that we consider COVID. And when you don't get together with friends, what are you missing in your life? I mean, think about what you're missing if you don't get together with friends. Next would be, this one is probably the most striking to me and honestly a little bit upsetting, but I can see we're busy people, I get it. Going out with parents. I mean, look at how low that is in our students that are entering into the college. Look how low that is. If you don't go out with parents, you're probably not really in a sense of mentoring. You're not watching your parents handle the world and do the world. So you're not adapting their sense of normal sometimes. You're just creating your own, and you're creating it from a place of isolation. We do know that. That is objective. That is a fact. And you can see how low it is. I mean, think about what COVID would do. And it just really shows you why we have anxiety going up and depression going up. Suicide rate is going up because it's already low. COVID made it worse. These are facts. Feeling left out and alone, that's high. Suicide rate has gone up and has really skyrocketed even more since COVID. Why? Because of the isolation. So what does that tell you? This tells you that students have less chances to experience mentoring and are socializing less. They're at risk for decreased social skills and increased need for support. They tend to be alone, confused, and uncertain about the future. Anxiety and depression are at an all-time high. And it was high before COVID, but it's high now. And so I taught back in 2005, and students looked up at me. They sat in the hallway and talked. They came to class and they talked. I left for a couple years and had children and came back, and nobody was looking at anybody. Everybody was staring at this phone. It's like the world changed in the 3 years I was out having children. And boy, students didn't talk. Students just looked down constantly. And what's interesting, from 2005 to when I came back to teaching, I can definitely tell you anxiety and depression skyrocketed because we didn't really talk about it before, and it was happening, but not to the extreme it is now. There is definitely a massive wave of students with really high levels of anxiety and depression and other mental illness as well. We have that other set of students that you guys talked about. I'm going to go back to this one. And this is just the non-traditional students we also serve. And this would be factual. This is what they're dealing with. This is the facts that we have. And so normal for them is going to be very different from our normal of our younger students. These have increased responsibilities and stress. They are in the sandwich effect, which means they're caring for their parents and their children. They can be ignited with frustration, overwhelmed with multiple expectations. They have sacrificed much to be a student and have much to risk. They report feeling alone, fearful, and anxious. So right here, again, we have another problem with students feeling overwhelmed, stressed. These are facts. Again, we're back into the facts. So, what do we do with all this? I mean, so far, all of our facts say this, that students feel alone, and these are the facts. So this is already our normal going into the future. We can already say that we know students are feeling alone. So I'm going to go ahead and put that up here really quick. We know students are feeling alone. We know they're feeling frustrated. And these are just the facts that we know. Okay, so how is normal subjective? And this is where it's going to get sticky for us as instructors, administrators, faculty, and staff going into the fall. And this is the unpredictable. This is the subjective. That is two people looking at a piece of pie and one person saying yummy and the other person saying yuck. And so this is the part that's harder to tackle. It is for mental health counselors. It probably is for most people at the community college level. We get the objective. We have a diagnostic manual, a statistical manual of disorders. We have our experiences from watching students throughout the years. We have, there is an objective there. That's the easier, quote unquote, way to walk into the fall with what we know. What we are walking into in the fall is something completely different, and that is the subjective. So normal is objective and normal is subjective. And this is the one that's going to cause the challenges. Okay, so here are some examples. Okay, and I've actually heard these. These are real live examples that I've heard in class. So I'm going to give it to you. So I asked, what does the word princess mean? We were talking about it in class one day. And so our objective would be, what our objective term would be, it's an actual princess. Okay, it could be this type of princess or an actual princess living in England, but there's an actual princess, also a term of endearment. Oh, honey, you're my princess. I actually had a student one day in class, we were talking about this. She said, that is when my dad is so angry at me. And when I hear the word princess, my heart sinks. And I just know something bad is coming. And we started to talk about that as a class of how that word is so subjective. So what if she was to date someone one day and he said, oh, you're beautiful, you're like a princess. She could possibly get upset and he would be confused. Why? Because this word has different meanings for different people. It is objective, but it is also very subjective. So I've heard this one when I was a counselor. What does respect mean? I've heard things like, my son or daughter needs to say yes sir, yes ma'am all the time. I've heard parents say that they don't cuss. I've heard other parents say if they go to church. I've heard other students say, well, respect is recycling, doing your part for the earth. Respect is, letting someone cross your path when you're walking, that type of respect. Some is, I had a parent say, respect is whenever my daughter is out, she calls and texts me every couple hours to tell me where she is. And so for this mom, Her mom, this daughter could cuss at her mom. This daughter could be totally, quote unquote, disrespectful, what we might think. But to this mom, disrespect to her was not calling or texting. And to others, it might be complete obedience. But think about it. What does respect mean? If I put a whiteboard on here and said, tell me your meaning of respect, guaranteed they would all be different. So when I became a counselor, one of the first things I said is, well, what does it mean? So here's another one. What does success mean? What does respect mean? And I had to let the family define it because it meant something different to every family. This is probably the most interesting one that I got from people when I did counseling. And I had a mom say, she said, my child would be successful if they did not choose to be homeless. And she said, I worked very hard to get us off the streets into government housing. And she was very proud of herself, and she should have been, because they were not homeless anymore. She didn't care if he went to college. She didn't care what he did for a living. She just didn't want him to be homeless. So success to her was not being homeless anymore. But I can also tell you this, my husband comes from a family of doctors and lawyers and engineers. And success to them was when he got a master's degree, they were like, oh, that's kind of sad. They were, because he got a master's in religion, and they were like, yeah, but everybody, because my husband comes from a very affluent family. There's lots of doctors and lawyers and just lots of like people who make a lot of money, or and my husband was not that. And he was considered, in their mind, he just didn't raise to their expectation. Very different than when you talk about a mom who says, I just don't want my son to be homeless. Some say being true to yourself, being able to support yourself. I had one mother say if she could just graduate high school, and that's what she told her daughter. She said, if you could graduate high school, you could do anything. And she was serious. You could do anything. She's like, if my daughter graduated high school, she would be successful. I mean, what a varying mesh of different realities there. Here's one that tends to hit some chords when we would talk about this in substance abuse class. Well, what's too much alcohol? What does that even mean? And these are some of the examples that I got. I actually had a student say, my family, we don't drink, so I think one alcoholic beverage a day is too much. And I had another student go, are you kidding me? She's like, my stepmom has 4 or 5 alcoholic drinks on the counter a night. In my house, that's normal. And I remember hearing the students talk back and forth. Nobody was mad. Everybody was just talking. But somebody said none. And someone else said, well, that in my house, that doesn't work in my house. Too much would be, not 4 or 5 on the counter. That's normal for us. So it's very interesting how anything can have such a wide range of meaning there. So what does this mean for us going into the fall? The meaning of the word is subjective to a person's background, culture, experiences, race, religion, and health. Normal is both subjective and objective. And again, like I said before, the objective part is kind of the easier part to deal with because it's written in a book or on a policy. But the subjective is much harder when we think of what is normal for each one of our students. So what does normal mean now? It's the difference between feeling anxious and feeling calm, a smartphone versus a flip phone, being alone versus being supported, wearing a mask or needing to comply to wearing a mask, going to church or not attending, parents who drink versus parents who do not, going to college and being the first to go to college. And all of that is normal. All of that is normal for all of our students. So what is normal to one person could be abnormal to another. And that is just one of the highlighted statements for our talk today. And that is, what is normal to you is not normal to someone else. And that is huge. And we just cannot assume that what is normal to us is normal to someone else. And we have to be very careful how we speak and how we talk, that we are inclusive. Even something that just seems so normal to us is just so abnormal to someone else. And a good example of that is in my house, I come from an Italian family, and so we talk at a very high volume and we talk really fast. And my husband comes from a very reserved family, like, very, they're a wonderful couple, but she cooks 5-course meals. They're very different, and they're very soft-spoken and very sweet. And when he came to my house, it was just a lot of yelling and screaming, but we love each other. And he thought that was disrespectful. It's just very interesting to see how we perceive other people as being wrong or abnormal when they're not. It's all normal. It's just normal to us. So what is the word normal meaning based on? Basically, a person's background, values, belief, experiences, demographics, and culture. Again, it's what normal means to you. So when you have a class of 30 students, every one of those is going to have a different version of the word normal. What is normal to them? And if you want to try it as an experience and as an experiment, in one of your classes, ask them, what does success mean to you? You know, where do you want to be one day? What does motivation look like to you? And ask those questions, because you're going to find they all have completely different answers. They might have varying things that are alike, but very different. So normal when I started was this. This is the college I worked at. You can just read through those really quick. If you were around in 2005 when you were teaching, feel free to check mark that screen. But if you were around then you totally understand that there were face-to-face meetings. We had paper stuff. We had trips to the library, handwritten comments. I mean, it was all just very different world. And then normal before COVID was still traditional classes, physical offices, paperwork, face-to-face support, busy hallways, nervous students, after class conversations, discussions, students falling asleep in our classes, in-office meetings, and social interaction. And anxiety and depression was steadily on a rise, but not like it is today. So what's normal now? You know, nowadays, you know, what is normal now during COVID? Educators are trying to figure out how to do education completely different. Distance, digital everything, and disconnection. Online meets, no faces, little conversation, inequality, virtual meetings, and underlining fear of social interaction. And anxiety, depression is at an all-time high. So, you know, going into fall 2021, what is normal then? Well, it's a combination of all those scenarios and those meanings, varying methods, abilities, and comfort levels with face-to-face interaction or virtual interaction. This semester will be unlike any other. So with that, you have to just give it that big question mark, because like I said, you have 30 students in your class and they're all going to have a different meaning of the word normal. And feeling fear is normal to one student, while another student feels a sense of fear and it's immobilizing. They can't move. So even students feeling anxiety and depression will have different reactions to it. One student can feel depression and they can still come to class. One student feels a sense of depression and they miss 2 weeks. And it might be, you know, close to almost the same varying levels of depression, but one student will be able to come to class and one won't. But that doesn't mean one student's wrong and one's right. It is just that normal for their family and for who they are. Every meaning of the word normal is different. The meaning of normal is unpredictable. It means something different to each person, which makes going into the future just so hard. What was expected is now completely unexpected. So what does this mean for us? And I'll give you some scenarios in a second. So what does this mean for us? How can you walk away from this? Because we're walking into 30 different meanings of the word normal. For one student, like I said, depression is normal for them and they know how to function, and depression for someone else is so abnormal that they're thinking about suicide. And so it's just two different reactions to the same stimuli, and that's normal. And I explain it to my students this way: if we had a fire and we all had to evacuate, we would all have different reactions from the fire. I might start a support group to help others, handle their post-traumatic from their fire experience. And I might start a support group. Someone else might write a book. Someone else might go into a deep depression. Someone else might get an addiction of some sort. Someone else might not be able to leave the house for a while and need some counseling. But we'd all have a different reaction to a traumatic event. And that's what's happening with COVID. You're having 30 different people in your class having a different reaction to the stressor. So like if there was a fire in this building, we would all have a different reaction. Some people would, get out there and, start educating others of what to do if that happened to them, and other people would, shut down. So the same event happens, the same stimulus, but there's a very different reaction for each person. And that is what we're dealing with COVID. It's been a traumatic event for everyone. And now we have 30 different reactions in your class to that traumatic event. So what does that mean? To not expect students to conform to the old way. That is due on time. Something I understand we have to say no late assignments in our syllabus. I understand. I do think there is a way to say, and I can send you what I write in my syllabus if you want that. I don't have it pulled up, but I write something that, the expectations that you submit something on time. But we do understand that life happens and you may need to turn something in late. That does come with the deduction. And if they turn something in late more than 2 times, we're going to have to meet and talk about an academic plan to help them so they're successful for the rest of the semester, because that's not the norm. For this class, because we do have to have a norm, which is the objective, and that's an attendance policy. But we do have some wiggle room on the other stuff. So if you have no late submissions in your syllabus in bold, I would recommend you do things like take that out, because we really can't expect students to submit to that right now. And that might have just made you shut down and not want to come back to this training, and I understand. But I think we're trying to have people conform to the old way. But the truth is, with COVID, with this traumatic event, students are displaced, they're moving around, they've got jobs, there's so much going on. And so saying no late submissions is saying, look, you need to conform to my normal. And there is some of that we have to do because we're in education, we have standards and financial aid, and there's requirements by the state, but there is some wiggle room for that says, look, no late assignments is the expectation. However, we do understand life happens. And you can say, if you email me before the deadline, I can possibly, extend that a day. But if you miss more than 2 times, I'm going to have to meet with you virtually to make sure that you can be successful. I like that policy too, because if you have to meet with them 2 times, if you have to meet with them 1 time after missing twice, you have that chance to connect to find out if something is going on, which is preventing them. And again, we have no idea what's happening with these students. And if you're teaching a long time like me, sometimes we can get cynical and go, oh, they just don't care. Oh, and we kind of assume. But after COVID, man, my whole opinion changed, because I saw the way my 5 children all suffered with COVID and having to do virtual learning. And the teachers were I don't think they meant to be rude or cruel, but they would say things like, it's in your assignment. I told you this already. And I would just see the way they would cry and the grief. And I thought, wow, why can we not be more compassionate? And that's because the normal has changed. And so I could see how their teachers were like, no, you will conform to my normal. You will do it this way. And the shaming, the embarrassment, you will do this and I thought, we've got to flex. And then I had one teacher that my son had. He flourished. He did great. His teacher just tossed out the norm. I mean, she did attendance and all the things we're talking about that you have to do, but she got rid of the glue sticks and the cutting and pasting, and she created a whole different way of learning. And my son did awesome. And my son, out of all 5 of my children, my son was the only one to pass his EOGs, and all of my other children failed their EOGs. And I think a lot of it has to do with teachers who are like, okay, this isn't going to work. We're going to have to create a new norm. Put away your colors, put away your paste. We're going to do this virtual. And she was awesome. She really brought learning to a place where my son would miss an assignment. She would just send him an email and say, okay, I need you to turn that in. You do have a 0. You need to get it done. And she would help him. If he said, I hate this assignment, she would say, oh, that's such a bummer. This assignment could help you in life one day. What are you struggling with? And the other teachers were just very shaming. And boy, did it affect my house. We talk about tears and crying. So I think if we try to get people to conform to the old way, it's not going to work. It's just going to end up in everybody being frustrated. We have to adapt to various meanings of the word normal. We need to be flexible. Like I said, the bold print in the syllabus says no late, assignments, no exceptions, creates barriers and says you will conform to my norm. And there has to be some sort of wiggle room as we go into this unprecedented fall semester. I'm still going to talk about it as a traumatic event, because just like if we had a fire here, that's a traumatic event. And we would all have a different reaction in this building to how we handled it. Some would go one way, some others would go other way. I mean, it would all be so different. And COVID has done the same thing. And we have students just walking through that front door is a huge accomplishment. And for others, an A is a huge accomplishment. And we need to treat the ones with the A, who want an A, the same way we're treating those who walked through the door, and that was a giant accomplishment, just walking through the door. We have an increased need for empathy. I'm not saying we need to change the standards and, reduce the standard for one student. Lots of late submissions. I'm not saying that, because we do have accessibility services that does help our students struggling, and we do need to send them that way so they can get support. But we are in uncharted territory. We are as well as they are. I'm doing education in a new way. I told somebody about Flipgrid the other day. If you've never heard of Flipgrid, and I can write it on the screen. It's kind of like, if you've never heard of Flipgrid, I would recommend looking it up, but it's doing discussion boards, but students get to do 30-second videos and do their discussion board in 30-second videos. And you can get an educator account for free. But Flipgrid is really big right now, and it's just changing the way we do things because students don't have all this time to do a discussion board. And maybe Flipgrid is a better option for your class. So again, just trying to think how we can serve our students. Adapt to virtual learners. Get my pencil back out. Adapt to virtual learners and traditional learners. And what that means is it might be like using Flipgrid. I took out discussion boards for most of our classes and I replaced them with journals. If you've never seen journals in Blackboard, I highly recommend you can email me or reach out to Blackboard, but find out about journals as well. Journals are when a student connects with their instructor and you write each other back. And it's a way to connect. So I did some discussion boards and I did half journals because in this time of traumatic event with COVID, you like the journals, Danielle, they're wonderful. I have loved them because they're between you and a student. So when I ask them a question that's academic, I also say, how's your week going? What barriers did you have in doing your work this week? And again, it's another opportunity to put them in a different direction. My program was traditional. We had traditional meetings in classrooms. We had textbooks and all these things, and our numbers were going down. So when I came in, I said, well, we've got to change everything we're doing. I mean, the world has changed. COVID has changed everyone. Parents can't just come to class on a Tuesday because their kids might be home. And the whole world has changed. Kids are using the computers and parents can't use the computer because everybody's home. And COVID has changed everything. So we need to adapt. I mean, that is the number one line there is we have to adapt. I mean, adapting is just everything. We have to adapt. And that means we have to be flexible. And that can be really hard because that requires maybe more hours that we have to spend in front of the computer. So basically our program went zero cost. Our program was completely redesigned and we just basically, if it's a 3-hour class, there's 3 hours worth of learning. It's 4 hours, it's 4 hours. We went to the standards of the state. We added what students needed and we took out the textbooks. We redid the Blackboard classes. We took out a lot of the journals. We added a lot more discussion. I mean, we took out the discussion boards and added more journals so students could connect with us as the instructors. So we have to adapt or our numbers are going to keep going down and students aren't going to be successful. They're just not going to graduate. So what it comes down to, if you can only remember 2 things in this training, you can't remember anything else, you got to flex or fold. And I love my little back bend guide. I don't want you to do a back bend in your class because that would not be a good thing, or in admissions or in financial aid or in veterans, upper and bound. I don't want you to do that. I want you to flex. And flex means to adapt to change, work with students, have empathy, flexibility, and try new things. Try Flipgrid, try journals, try something else because we had a traumatic event. What can we do differently? And it requires some brainstorming and working, but my program has completely changed since January. And we've taken it mostly online. We do have some class meets, but we meet on Saturdays and a few select Saturdays now. And we have no books and we just changed everything. And we had to do that because students' lives have changed. COVID has changed everything. So again, flex or fold, that's the decision. I don't really think there is a middle ground, and there could be a middle ground, but I think you either have to be flexible or you have to fold. You got to walk, students walk away, we walk away. There's increased frustration and education is not effective because I can tell you right now with my 5 kids, 4 of them didn't pass their EOGs and they literally cried almost every day because they did not feel supported. And I could see where they really weren't supported. It was tough because they wanted students to conform to their way. And that's not talking bad about anybody. We were all thrown into COVID and everybody did the best they could. But we had one teacher who really, really said, okay, we got a whole new way of doing things. And I'm sure it created more time on her part. So we'll do 3 quick scenarios here before we to get off really quick. Is you just say, John, 48 years old, is a first-year student, and he is struggling with online learning. He emails you and states he works a full-time job, has 3 children, and is trying to earn his AA degree. He states being confused by Blackboard and has not bought a textbook yet for his class. He's waiting for his first paycheck. He states being dedicated to his education, but is feeling overwhelmed. So what can we do in these situations? I mean, we can obviously be flexible. We can, give him a copy of the textbook to borrow. We can also contact like Cengage and say, can he have a 2-week trial? We can help negotiate those and help introduce them to our reps and say, this student needs some help. We can also let them when I came to the program, they copied, the first page in a PDF of the textbook, and they let students just borrow it for, one time, and they had to bring it back if they didn't have a book, just to get them so they could get into at least the first week. And just trying to find ways that we can help students who are in this state, because I've heard this so many times. And I honestly, the fact that they're here is a huge check mark, and we want to see them graduate. If we do, we have got to change the way we're approaching students like John. Here's another one, Michelle, 16-year-old. I think most of us have heard this one. She's a CCP student. I'm not saying CCP. Sometimes high school students who just graduate. Is angry at her C assignment grade. She states, I have always earned A grades and I have a 4.0. She states, I've worked very hard on this assignment. It took me a very long time. I believe I earned a better grade. What can we do in these situations? Go to tutoring is not necessarily going to work for the student. In these situations, what I've said is, there's a rubric, and I've guided through the rubric. But what I've also said, which I've never said before, is, hey, if you want to email me your assignment about 48 hours, I'll look it over. I can't grade it, but I can at least look it over and give you some comments. And I said, if I've probably said that to 50 students, and maybe 2 or 3 have taken me up on it, and I give them just kind of general comments, and then they can upload. And so though I say it to everybody, 2 or 3 have taken me up on it, but that's another way we can be flexible in these times. And so a colleague asks you to attend a meeting, but you're uncomfortable in groups of people. You do not want to hurt her feelings, but you do not want to talk about the reasons why you rather meet virtually. So you just want to be anonymous in the fact that you don't want to be in that situation. So again, how can you flex? Well, hey, we can do a virtual meet, no problem. I mean, there are ways we can flex in that way. And there are some schools and organizations that I've worked with who are like, we're not doing that. We are meeting in person no matter what. But the fact that Erin moved everything online virtually so fast was amazing. Kudos to Erin. That's amazing what she did. But being flexible in that way. And the same with students. I have never done a Google Meet with a student before January, and I think I've done about 100 Google Meets with students after January. Every time I write an email now, I've got 3 or 4 screenshots of all the steps they need to take to do something. I used to never do that before, but COVID has changed. This traumatic event has changed everything. So instead of telling a student to do something, I write them back and I include screenshots of everything they need to do, so they have to do less. I give them hyperlinks so they can get to stuff easier. I write a person on their behalf and say, let me introduce you to this person. They need a little bit of help. If you've never heard of Screencastify, it's an extension for Google Chrome. Super, super, super easy. But Screencastify is a really great extension on. It's a great extension for Google if you've never heard of it. And what it allows me to do is make a video for a student. So if a student writes me something and it's pretty deep, I basically do a Screencastify, and it's just an extension on Chrome. And you can do under 5-minute video for free, and it uploads right to YouTube. It's so easy. I mean, crazy easy. Or it'll go to Google Drive if you want it to. So you can either go to Google Drive or go to YouTube. And it takes me 2 minutes, and when a student writes me something really challenging, I just say, hey, it was just easier for me to make you a quick video. I hope everything's going okay. Let me tell you how to do this. Let me just show you really quick and show my screen. I hope you're having a good day. And it's like a 2-minute video, and then I send it to them. And again, adapting to what's happened in this traumatic event, and our students just are more visual than they are going to read my emails. So what needs to happen? Let's just sum this up in our last few minutes, and that is learning is digital and an in-person expertise. It requires that we be digitally savvy and in-person savvy. We have to grow, and I'm not trying to say that so absolute, but it kind of is. We have to grow during this traumatic event that's happened in the world. We have to grow. We have to change. We have to adapt. We need to adapt. We need to change. Sometimes we don't want to hear that because it's a lot of work, and I understand. But if we have a new mindset, we will have a new outcome. And I love that one, which is one reason why we changed most of the aspects of our program, is to have a new outcome. To be brave, try new things. Trying new things means you're brave and you do care. Brainstorm with your colleagues. Anytime you need to brainstorm, call me up. Come sit in my office. I'm happy to brainstorm with anybody. Ask for help. Take it day by day, student by student. That is a huge piece of advice right there. I'll even give that one a little heart. This is a take it day by day, student by student. We do want to maintain a sense of fair. We do want to, maintain a sense of, like I do with the, you can have 2 late assignments, but we'll have to meet after that to talk about your time management or what's going on in your life. And that's day by day, student by student. I don't have adjuncts who give, all these extensions to one student and another student doesn't get anything. I want to keep it very uniform for our department, but there are students who do need another accommodation, and we are quick to bring them to Megan and say, accessibility services can help you, student by student, day by day. Take chances, get messy, make mistakes. Anybody know where that comes from? You get a gold star if you know where that comes from. I love this. My kids and I say this all the time. Does anybody know where that comes from? Take chances, get messy, and make mistakes. We say that all the time in my house. Does anybody know where that comes from? Art class. Yeah, kind of. Have you guys ever seen Magic School Bus? If you've ever seen Magic School Bus, she says in there, take chances, get messy, and make mistakes. Miss Frizzle, yes, Miss Frizzle. And we say that in my house all the time. Take chances, get messy, and make mistakes. And with this, that's what it is. But if we don't adapt, I really don't think we're going to survive, but I don't think our students are. And I want you to see COVID as like this traumatic event, and we are all going to respond differently. So when you look at your 30 students, all 30 students are responding to this in their own way. And I want to say it again, but I'm going to say it one more time. Walking through that door the first day could be a big step for someone. So if you've done anything that's worked for you or you have any questions, this would be a great time to ask. If not, this is your virtual high five for coming and attending. If you have any questions, stick around and ask. I'll stick around for another 10 minutes if anybody has any questions. But if you've had anything that's worked for you, if you want to just write it up here on the board, and I'll just, write something just so you guys can see. If you want to write it up here before you go, that would be awesome, like Flipgrid. If you have anything that's worked for you, go ahead and stick that up there. Before you log out. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself, but other than that, we are done. So definitely give yourself a virtual high five, and you made it to the end. So I'll put this back up here if anybody wants to write on this before you go, feel free, but anything that has worked for you, you can put that on there. Thank you. Bye, Kelly. Bye, Allison. Thank you. Bye, Heather, Amy. Bye, Carl.